friends to Inks and Issues, a podcast where we discuss comics in a book club style format. I am the all-powerful child, Jonah Gregory.
And my name is Kieran, and no matter how much you read of me, there's still more pages to go.
And today we are joined by special guest, Pat Edwards.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. You don't have to have a goof ready. I didn't warn you ahead of time, so don't. And Pat, you are on a couple podcasts, Let's Rewatch and For Who the Dice Rolls. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure I said them correctly so people can actually find them.
In addition, I do that in between writing silly stories.
Yes, you've written a book, a very funny book called Space Trippin'.
Yeah.
And it's like Hitchhiker's Guide, but everyone's on a drunk bender and they're truckers. That's probably like the elevator pitch right there, right?
Mm-hmm. And a lot more swearing, too.
Well, that's fair, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's easy recommend from me because it is definitely in my wheelhouse of like weird sci-fi comedy stuff. So Pat, you recommended the book today, and we're going to hold you to that because you decided to pick the entire Age of Apocalypse, which is a lot of comic.
I'm a glutton for 90s style punishment.
Right. That's fair. So what drew you to this book, I guess, initially versus us going back to it?
Just honestly, when we first were talking about me coming on, it was the first one. That was the first one that came to mind for me. It was one of the first series that really hooked me in when I was younger and really getting into comics. And at the time, just the idea of an alternate timeline with these characters I was already familiar with was really radical.
Yeah.
To, junior high Pat. and it's funny. And I just remember really liking it. And it's been a really long time since I had read it. So, I've talked with you, we talked a little bit about offline. It kind of follows the format of one of my shows, Let's Rewatch, where it's something I really liked back in the day. Haven't read or seen in a long time, so revisit it and we got to see if it held up.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. Yeah,
spoiler, it totally did. It's perfect. Listen,
it is from start to finish. I was like, this is just this whole
multi-episode series of Inks and Issues is just going to be glowing. How perfect it is.
Uh-huh.
It's one I know I was familiar with at the time, but like I didn't follow closely enough to really know what was going on. I think I got most of my information from the trading cards that kind of broke down who all the characters and plots were really succinctly. So it'd be like 2 paragraphs explaining who Apocalypse was instead of, 4 volumes of trade paperbacks that are significantly larger than most that we review.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys humoring me.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I was actually really excited because I had actually already bought volumes 1 and 2 because my friend owns it's like a game and comic store, and he had them on the shelf, and I was like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to go back and read this because I kind of missed it the first time. So he's like, I'll give you a discount on if you buy them both. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Nice.
So I was kind of already locked in before we had even talked about it. So
this time reading them through, it was interesting for me too because we all were reading the Age of Apocalypse, the complete epic. There's a prelude in 4 volumes, and they've got them kind of prearranged in chronological order for you in these volumes. When I was reading them originally, I don't know if you remember, they had made these like gold covered. It was all gold, trade paperbacks of a whole storyline of each of the different X Factor, Uncanny X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, Excalibur, all of those. And they kind of all weave together. So I read them in a very different order.
Oh, okay.
When I originally read them, where I'd read like kind of the whole arc of each group of characters in the Age of Apocalypse. And then this is a much more, jumping around chronological that we've now read them in, which is interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it was it was definitely strange to just jump in because like the prelude, which I don't know how much we were going to dive into the prelude. because it's really hard to follow, especially at first. Like, it slowly kind of turns into having some structure to it, but the first, what is it, like 50 pages or so? Maybe not quite that much, but it's a lot. It just keeps jumping, like, okay, here's 2 pages of this character, and it even has their name. It's like, this is about Psylocke, this is about Wolverine, this is about Professor X. It's like, here's what he's doing, here's what this other guy's doing.
That small bit, more so than any other bit, did make me feel like, this is what it is like to be a comics reader in the middle of the 90s, just before the entire market went completely belly up because everything was so bloated and it was really hard to understand.
Yeah.
Should we start with a quick dive right in?
Yeah. Do we have just an overall summary we can give everybody for those that aren't familiar with what Age of Apocalypse is all about?
Yeah, I can. It is go for it. An alternate timeline that basically posits the question: what would have happened if Charles Xavier had died way back in the day before he had a chance to form the X-Men or even really get started in any kind of mutant advocacy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very succinct way to put it. So
I'm trying not to spoil because we're going to go.
No, that's good. Like that's actually very.
Now, I thought going into this that this was about something completely different. Same
here. I thought Age of Apocalypse was kind of like how the movie put it, set it in like the, current timeline of whatever was happening. I didn't realize it was totally its own thing.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And what's fun, I remember when I was looking up stuff, whoever the writer, the director of the movie was, said that this gave him the inspiration because they share a title. But really, honestly, the title and the fact that they both feature Apocalypse as the main villain are the only 2 things they have in common. The only things at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. So the prelude, there is a summary on the back, which are sometimes fun to read just because sometimes they're pretty accurate. We've had other books where we've read them and we're like, that has nothing to do with what happened in this story arc. So this
I'm going to guess it's the latter because this went all over the place.
Yeah, so for the prelude, the summary says, Legion, the supremely powerful son of Charles Xavier, wants to change the world, and he's traveled back in time to kill Magneto to do it. Can the X-Men stop him, or will the world as we know it cease to exist? Featuring the last day of Cable's life, Gambit vs. Sabretooth, the beginning of Archangel and Psylocke's relationship, and Mystique, bent on revenge. Witness the final moments in the lives of the X-Men before their world changes forever.
Well, they're really burying the lead there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of stuff that happens, though, right?
Yeah. Are they gonna do it? Find out in the final days before everything changes after they maybe don't do it.
Exactly. So we're just gonna say right out, this whole thing features lots of time and dimension traveling, which you are in for a wild ride right from the beginning. So, basically, if we're going to break down the prelude, once you get into the meat of the story, it's essentially about, as the summary said, Legion, Charles Xavier's son, who's this ridiculously powerful mutant who has multiple personalities, each with their own power. Yeah. But in this, he has finally, his mind has been healed, and he turns into this ridiculously overpowered mutant who pulls a bunch of people on accident, a bunch of the X-Men through time on accident. Do you remember who all goes back with him?
Yeah, it's but also before we get to that, I want to have one quick aside because I'm going to have through this whole episode arc, I'm going to have a running commentary on the art choices.
Okay,
because there were some very bold choices made throughout this whole series. A lot of the times wardrobe, and right out the gate in the very first issue, Gambit's outfit of short frayed jean shorts, a football jersey, and what looks like wrestling laced up wrestling boots.
Yes,
I just
there are a lot
you can't even blame
really
that on the 90s because that's not even something in the 90s really. That's just the stuff that one really, I even made a note of it. That's how much that one stood out to me. But
that's just Gambit being Gambit.
Yeah. It kind of goes all over the place with lots of backstory with them hunting down. Yeah. Just establishes a lot of a lot of relationship stuff. Like who's in relationships with who.
A lot of relationship stuff. Like a lot of interpersonal drama. And there's a lot of that, like that kind of telling, not showing kind of thing where like there'll be two characters talking.
Yes, Kieran, I wrote down. And someone will be like, well, remember how your relationship was collapsing 2 months ago and we had a conversation where I said that you should do something about it, but you said that you weren't going to? And the other character will just be like, yes, I do remember that. And then they just carry on. And you're like, oh, okay, so you're catching me up. I get it.
The very depressed Bobby / Iceman who's like,
oh my gosh,
just moping about how someone
Emma
took
Frost.
over his mind.
Emma Frost took over his mind. Did a better job with his powers.
Was better at being Iceman than Iceman. So
he says it like 6 times, and like it's just like, come on, dude, chill. I didn't mean that. Pun intended. But it's funny you said that, Kieran, because I have I have a big Google Doc that has all these like just stream of consciousness notes as I was reading it, and I wrote one as, holy fuck, this overly expositional internal monologuing is killing me.
Yeah, and like there, especially in the first bit of the prologue volume, where it's basically just like introducing you to all of the characters and like what they're up to kind of thing. And because I don't know why they chose to do it this way, but for some reason, all of the characters, as you said, Pat, monologue about what they've been doing just previously, but in like real, like in detail, just irrespective of any context. And they don't really explain anything, but they like really tell you what they've been up to, like who was there, what they did, how long ago it's been, what they're feeling about it. They don't really explain
what they had for breakfast.
I would not have been surprised.
Don't you remember, Rogue? It was the day we had ham and eggs together.
But was it really me, or was it Emma Frost, who, by the way, took over my mind just in case I hadn't told you about that?
Right.
So much of it is, do you really need to know? And so much of it you don't need to know, because really it's all to get to Legion Quest, the Legion Quest arc. And that's just the second half of the prelude. I also wrote, oh my god, this prelude is so long.
It's really long.
It is actually bigger than the first volume of the actual story, which I was very surprised about.
Yeah.
My copy, I don't know if it's just because they re-released the volume 1 through 4 more recently, because weirdly the coloring changed quite a bit between the two. I don't know if your copies did that, but it went from like what I expect of 90s coloring, like, you know, to like the super glossy stuff, but it's also on a nicer paper. So I'm wondering if the prelude was like, I guess we should collect this again. Because it just like, it did not seem to receive the same love and affection and attention from Marvel that the rest of the volumes have, which I thought was weird, unless this is just like an older printing that I happened to find. Because, it was very weird. But I guess you guys read it digitally, right? So you wouldn't have that to compare.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. They set up the characters. They have a little bit of some of them trying to track down Mystique early on. And she keeps, by the way, they're really bad at capturing her, because they have her cornered like 5 times. And then she's like, there's literally, I think, a point where she said, just my luck. It's literally, it was like, yet another diversion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that literally was a line in there.
I was reading that one. I was reading that bit digitally because Mystique is trying to kill Legion, who is Professor X's son, because Legion killed a friend of Mystique. So it's Destiny. Not really.
He killed
Destiny. Yeah.
Well, actually, I had heard a thing that Mystique and Destiny were low key in a relationship.
Oh, okay. Right. That's not explained.
That's just a theory. It's it's in no way explicitly.
Oh, okay. Right. Classic.
But I'm saying that's yeah.
But yeah, so they're trying to capture her, and I was reading it digitally, and so I'm like looking at one page, and they're all like, "It's Mystique, get her!" And then I go to the next page, and it doesn't load. And I was like, oh, that's annoying. So I just go to the next page, and the next page is them going, another distraction. She's so good at this. And I was like, oh, I wonder how she got away. So I went back and I refreshed it to try and load at the page. All she does is she like just throws down a flashbang and just like flips out a window, and that was it. And I was like, well, aren't you guys like an elite mutant team? How did she constantly do this?
It's like the first one is they're literally they catch her right before she's about to kill Legion in his hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a tiny hospital room.
Yeah.
And there's like 6 of them, and she still gets,
still gets away.
They literally have Strong Guy, one of the physically biggest. It's like literally just standing in the doorway, dude. He could just like sit down in the doorway.
Well, they do have a panel that is like him making fun of being claustrophobic, like because like him and 2 other mutants are all trying to get through the doorway at the same time, and they're like all crammed in there because Strong Guy is behind them. And if you don't know, Strong Guy's a like 8 foot tall and 8 foot wide dude.
Oh yeah.
Who is
pretty strong
appropriately
guy.
named. He's quite strong. I was actually finding it quite hilarious. I forgot that Mystique's original design had the skull in the middle of her forehead because in this she's going on about how she's actually like the good guy here. And all I could think of was that, Mitchell and Webb, skit where they're playing the Nazi soldiers and they're like, are we the baddies?
Yes. Exactly. That was literally what I just thought of when you said.
Yeah.
So she breaks into the hospital, tries to kill Legion, and this all just leads into Legion Quest, which is like the actual like meat of the story, right? Because she spectacularly fails.
Yeah,
well, because he wakes up from his coma,
right.
Oh yeah, Legion's in a coma, by the way,
and all his personalities have coalesced into one coherent personality. By the way, a very 90s rudimentary understanding of how both autism and multiple personalities work.
Can we talk about that for 2 seconds? How I don't know what you'd even call it, like a content warning perhaps for the Prelude and Legion specifically because of its horrible misunderstanding of both of those. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we go through this that reminds like, oh yeah, this was before like wokeness was a thing. Like there's a lot of very insensitive.
The 90s is real bad for that.
So much of it you can tell it's like pure ignorance, not out of any maliciousness, but it was just. And we'll get into that later.
The bit that really stood out to me was that when there's a bit where Legion's lying in his hospital bed and they're kind of like establishing like, so this is Legion and he's Professor X and they're sort of like really going through that thing. Right. And it says something like, I can't bring it up in front of you. It's something like, wow, I mean like autism, big enough deal as it is. So difficult, so like impossible to deal with. But as a mutant, he would destroy the world because of his autism. And it's just like,
right. And did you know vaccines cause it?
Yeah. It's like, fucking chill.
Like, I'm shocked that line wasn't in there.
Yeah. It was so like, it wasn't good.
No.
So he wakes up and he stops her with his psionic powers, which that's another thing that throughout this, I love the vagueness of like energy based or psychic based powers. I wrote a bunch of phrases down that are like the the mumbo jumbo, like biogenetic microwave blasts or something stuff like that. Like,
it's like if you have powers, if you are a mutant, chances are you can somehow coalesce that into shooting out a blast of some description.
Yes. Or put up a shield of some kind.
Or put up a shield,
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that Magneto, who is also in this story, most often doesn't control metal, just kind of shoots magnet beams, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that seems to be like his main like thing where he's like, well, my control of magnetism is so great that I can just shoot a laser.
A magnetic laser? Yeah. Because that's totally how lasers work.
Yeah. It's how magnetism works.
Yes.
Yeah, Magneto's powers are kind of always pretty vague, I would say, in a lot of these books. And I was actually watching one of these like guys on YouTube who breaks down the science of like superheroes and stuff for fun. And He had a whole one about how like Magneto's actually more powerful than you, like he's probably the most powerful mutant because of the magnetism thing, the way they've kind of shown him use it. He's like, man, he's not even close to using it how he could be using it. Like instead of pulling on Wolverine like metal, he could basically just make him melt from the inside using magnetism because of the way magnetism heats up metal. So he had some pretty fun like scenarios when he was breaking down the science of that power. So seeing him in this and just being like, I'm shooting a beam of magnetism at you was so lame. I'm like, come on, dude. At least he did take like his helmet and turned it into like a mace at one point. That was kind of cool. Like he did use it to like manipulate metal and make like transform metal into other objects, which that I don't know if I had seen him do before.
And I'll just foreshadow right now, the ending of this whole series is him using his power in a pretty badass way.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that then.
Is it a big beam?
A really big beam.
Yeah, really big magnet laser. So yeah, Legion wakes up, he stops her. Magical diversion of like one of like 6. Mystique escapes.
Oh yeah.
Forge and company try to go after her. And then they do corner her, right? Like in an alley, and then she's fighting.
She's fighting Legion, and Legion like traps her in like his mindscape and says a bunch of stuff to her, and she just kind of collapses, and he flies away being like, I'm gonna fix everything and make my dad happy.
Oh, by the way, it's amazing how long we've been talking about Legion and that we haven't mentioned his hair.
Oh yeah, holy shit. Yes. His hair's
that's 8 feet tall.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like at all.
Okay, so you guys that know us from talking about JoJo's a lot, imagine Polnareff's hair, except taller.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's literally like 3 feet of black hair standing straight up that slightly fans out at the top, like an inverse cone.
Yeah.
Like a narrow inverse cone that's easily 3 feet tall.
Yes.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, if he was awake this whole time, that's probably just how he styles it, and like I can respect that energy.
Yeah.
But he's been in a coma for the last like 4 years, lying in a hospital bed,
and he's clean shaven, so they've been keeping him shaved, but they didn't.
Maybe they've been styling his hair for him. They've been gelling it while he's asleep.
If he came in with that hairstyle, maybe they thought it was one of his last wishes to
it's only polite to maintain his tower hair.
Yes.
It's
only gotten more powerful.
It's power hair.
Yeah, he's like Samson. If he doesn't have enough gel in his hair, he loses his psychic powers. That's where all the personalities are. They're stored in his hair.
I like to think he's got these grandiose plans, but he's actually really self-conscious, and he thinks it looks really cool. So he's actually using his psychic powers to keep it up. He's actually spending a fraction of his powers constantly to keep it.
Yeah. One of his personalities, really, that was all his power was keeping the hair up.
Yeah.
So.
One of his personalities doesn't even have a power. They're just a hairdresser.
Right. Does the plot with the Summers grandpa ever pay off? Because
no.
That was a whole thing.
Yeah,
they're just like, well, see you later.
There's so much before we get to Legion Quest, before this whole thing with Legion pops off, that is worthless. I wrote, like, there's like a little scene with, the Assassins Guild and the Thieves Guild that has to do with Gambit.
That's right. I totally forgot that was there.
That means it has nothing to do with anything. Like, it doesn't, there's a scene where it's like Adam Warlock is interviewing Exodus, I think, in jail or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember
that's totally worthless.
Yeah. See, I'm forgetting all the worthless bits.
There was definitely some scenes where you're like, these are in here just to get you to try and buy even more comics. Cause there's like a whole scene with Sabretooth and Wolverine where they're like about to fight. And there's like a box that's saying, if you want to see this epic fight, buy this other issue. I'm wow. It's honestly, that bad, huh?
Honestly, even like Psylocke is a huge player in the Prelude. Mm-hmm. She's not in
Volume 1.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember her in any of them, really.
Oh, in the rest of it.
Wow.
And she's a major player. I'd say she's like top 6 or 7 throughout the Prelude.
Yeah, definitely.
Out of like 300 characters, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, there is a bunch of stuff in the prelude that, like, just really doesn't have anything to do with anything. But I will say the issue with Adam Warlock and the Summer's dad, when, like, it's like his plane crashes and, like, he takes care of him and stuff, and, like, he helps him, like, see space and all that. It was a nice issue. It was a nice story.
It.
It just has nothing to do with what the overall kind of story is about. And I really don't know why it was there, because it's not like there's something at the start or the end that kind of ties it together. Like, it's not like, we're hunting down Legion, but sorry, I just have to run away and, like, help my grandpa or something. Or, like, you know, at the end, they're like, this is, you know, my grandpa who's now blind for some reason. This is what we're fighting for. This is why we need to find Legion. There's no connection. It's just in the middle of the prelude.
You could really start it. You could pick it up right from when, it's, God, forgive me. I'm going to get crucified by fans. It's Forge's group is X Factor, or not Factor X?
X Factor.
X Factor. When they show up in Israel hunting Mystique and through Avalanche, they get to her through her contact Avalanche, or her lackey Avalanche, which, by the way, is a very specific name for a much more broad set of powers that he has.
Also his powers, terrifying. Very, very terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a bit where they corner him, and it's like, you know, this is a thing that I actually miss.
The tidal wave.
It's a thing that I miss from modern comics, where they do, like, a whole bunch of boxes of narration. Like, I really like those, and some of them are very good. But he causes a tidal wave with his powers, and I was like, that has, like, massive implications for other ocean systems around where they are, and other, like, areas. Like, this is really bad.
But you could literally pick it up, because anyone who's reading this, you're aware of who most of these characters are. And you could just pick it up right there, where they're hunting her down. They have reason to believe she's in Israel. Is it Tel Aviv they're in?
Yeah.
And I think, go from there. And then her attacks Legion. Legion wakes up, and then you have the whole Legion quest arc.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, everything prior to that, you could just totally skip, because it has nothing to do with the story.
But don't you miss that, like, really, really entertaining arc when Bobby goes home for Sunday dinner with his parents?
Oh, yeah. His dad's a racist.
Yeah,
right.
A mutant racist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he's a total racist. He's a small racist.
Yeah.
He's
it's weird, because it's not like Iceman. It's not like Iceman or Rogue show up particularly prominently in the rest of the prologue or in the first volume. It's just another side story where it's like, hey, you know, these characters not going to be in the story.
Well, and they're both bigger characters in the overall Age of Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
But this little piece of backstory for Bobby Drake doesn't play or feed into anything of him in Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So it doesn't inform anything.
Doesn't help him get over his, feeling emasculated by
Jonah,
having his power. Him taking over and
wow.
Did you know he was taken over and then they used the powers better than he did?
Wow. Why did you not mention this prior?
I mean, I thought I had a couple times, but so do we want to jump into the actual parts, Legion quests?
Yeah, let's go to the meat.
So we can kind of burn through this and get to volume 1 here, because it's just a lot of comic to cover. So that one takes place with the X-Men chasing down Legion, of course. That's why it's Legion Quest. And the first part of that is basically like a big battle where he's like flying around and they're using lots of different kinds of beams at each other, as we mentioned before.
Storm, use a weather beam.
They're in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
They're out like in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And it's one of the X-Men teams led by Storm. And there's a lot. It opens with a lot of internal monologuing, or even they're talking, but it's that expositional stuff about like his psi beams are negating my sort of, pseudo psi beams.
Yeah, there's a lot of monologuing from them where they're basically just like, well, we're well fucked, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the long and short of it is they're getting their ass kicked.
Right. And the main point of it is it becomes like they're trying to have Psylocke take him out with her psychic knife power. But before they can really do that, he opens a portal, like a time portal, and they get sucked into it as well. So they being Storm, Forge, Psylocke, and Iceman,
and
right?
Bishop.
No, it's Bishop.
Bishop.
No, it's Bishop, Iceman, Psylocke, and Storm.
Okay. Forge is not one of the ones.
No, he's not.
But because he's in this quite a bit too, like scattered throughout.
What kills me is Xavier knows that his son is awake and stirring shit, and that's why the X-Men go there in the first place. This team of the X-Men,
right?
But he knows how powerful he is. How is he not there himself? How is not everyone? Everyone shows up later. How is not everyone there?
Yeah.
He shows.
But I feel like that would be.
He shows up later and he has like this conversation, I think with Jean Grey or Cyclops, and he's like, "Yeah, no, my son is like ridiculously powerful. I'm so worried about what's happened to them.
So where the fuck were
so
you,
much
bro?
concern." Yeah, and I was like, "You're another psychic. So is Jean Grey. Like, why were you not there to begin with?"
And you're also his dad.
Yeah.
So it's like double. You have like a double responsibility.
Exactly.
To, like,
send him to his
this.
room. I mean, come on.
So yeah,
take away Fortnite, and he'll.
He generates enough power. To open a portal back in time, and it's Psylocke, Bishop, Iceman, and Storm get sucked back in time with him,
and then we get to jump into part 2, which is actually where I was really on board because this is where they go back in time.
Well, before that, it cuts to outer space real quick.
Of course it does.
Yes. Real quick, for like 2 pages.
What the fuck was up with this?
The Shi'ar Empire in Lilandra, Queen Lilandra, and she just basically gets woken up by Jaff, that little like all white gremlin dude with no nose, because basically tell her the M-Cron crystal is like acting up. The thing that's like the source of all reality and power.
And
in the universe.
if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, these guys have really just started spouting a lot of bullshit. Don't worry, that's what it was like to read this as well.
Right?
It just has this massive
this is really
hard cut to space and a space queen with a crystal that's going to eat the universe for some fucking reason.
This really is like comic book soup. This whole it's just so much like thrown in together. And then we go back in time.
Yeah. We get Charles and Eric pre being like X-Mans or superheroes at all or anything, and they're even like don't know each other have powers yet. Like they suspect, but they're very coy about it, and they just kind of are like, "Yeah, isn't it crazy how there's these people with superpowers all of a sudden?" and I actually really liked this part of the story where they're like kind of feeling each other out, and it's like it felt the most human and down to earth. Like the writing in this part, I think, was probably the best writing in this whole thing.
It was.
And they at the hospital. I
was just gonna say it was really nice just to kind of see the two of them like kind of hanging out and just being friends and like debating like what the kind of the future for these crazy people with powers, if only we knew more about them, kind of thing. And it really kind of struck me that like the dynamic between Professor X as a hero and then Magneto as a villain, is why it's so excellent, is because of stuff like this, because they were originally friends and, able to kind of like, approach the same issue from two kind of different angles, but still sort of work together originally. And then to have that, breakdown of their relationship just makes it so much more interesting. And like, as you say, the writing is really good in this bit, just to kind of just exploring their relationship. So I also really enjoyed this bit.
Yeah. And I want to say I especially in this era, I feel like you got a lot of them talking about like, oh, we were such good friends, yada, yada, but you didn't really see it. And this was a nice insight into how they were just a couple of dudes who were like volunteering to help people. They're at this hospital. Magneto's like using his power to make like really nice wheelchairs, like secretly, but he doesn't tell people he used his powers. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm just good at making stuff with metal.
Well, he literally has that. I've always had a way with metal, and us,
that's right.
Us as the reader, all get to chuckle to ourselves.
I liked that.
He winks at the camera,
and let's see. There's lots of like jumping back and forth through time because, of course, there is.
Yeah, and then the rest of the X-Men show up in present day, and they find Jean, who is the only X-Men who is fighting Legion who didn't get sent back in time.
Right,
and she somehow knows that that's what happened.
Yeah, she said something about like there's temporal energies, and so she felt that they were going to go back in time. And then I think the people from space whose names escape me, they show up to tell
the Shi'ar
Empire. Sorry, I can't believe I forgot that. They show up to say that basically the reality crystal, or whatever the fuck it was called, is going to eat the universe because of Legion's tampering with time. And so they now have to go back in time and stop Legion from messing with the timeline. To try and stop the crystal from eating the universe.
And also Cable and Domino just showed up and get a bunch of guns pointed at them before that happens. And that's mostly just an excuse to have Cable be part of the story because he comes into it a lot more later.
I mean, if you got time travel involved, you got to...
Yeah.
Oh, you got
it.
Yeah.
Cable's an expert.
So, yeah. And as it turns out, our 4 X-Men who got sent to the past along with Legion lost their memories in the process.
Yes.
They know their names and they know they have powers, but they've just been hanging out in the city.
Like working the docks.
Yeah, working the docks. Yeah, and that's our first also kind of racially insensitive thing about Psylocke.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
everyone
God,
just constantly...
They multiple times had to point out that she's an Asian woman with a British accent, as if that's so crazy. That was definitely a thing that was in this book.
Oh, they also point out how crazy it is to have a black woman with white hair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
Which, that's not crazy, really.
No, it's not.
That happens.
No.
It's all we get older.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no 90s.
Oh, 90s.
We got those bringing us down. And then back in the past, we get Charles and Eric hanging out in the bar, and then when this like vet who is missing his legs is trying to get money, and a bunch of jerks dump alcohol on his head, and you get to see Xavier in a barroom brawl, and I'm like, they're really going here, huh? That's cool, I guess.
I mean, I kind of dug it from a like bonding. They're both right. It kind of shows you dual sides of them, where we both are working at this hospital to help people. But also, we're really tough dudes.
They are
dudes.
Insanely muscular. Like, I didn't realize how muscular they were until Professor X, who, you normally think is like a very academic, type. He's, he grabs the arm of like this big dude and he's like, I don't think you should be doing that kind of thing. And his arm is like thicker than like my legs kind of thing. Like, it's so... huge. And I was like, fuck, if I was that other dude, I would just like look at this like incredibly buff bald dude and be like, okay, actually, you know what? I don't want to be killed. I'm just going to leave because you could obviously just rip my head off.
So I have a pet theory for why. I know it's because that's what comic books do. And if you're a hero in spandex, you got to be like bigger and more shredded than Arnold in his prime.
Especially when Cable shows up. The metal arm that he has.
Oh, I know.
It's my lord.
And they make up muscles that aren't there. Like they just make up muscles that don't exist.
Oh yeah.
But I have this like little pet theory that's in my own head canon that is that being a mutant just genetically gives you that, like automatically does it for you.
And unless you're Blob, then you're just
because that's the only explanation. Why they're all just. It's insane.
My mutant power is that I can shoot ice. Also, I'm constantly juicing.
Yeah. So the racism stuff is bad, but there's also other things that are bad, like the fact that Legion in the past finds his mom, and then makes himself look like Xavier.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot that scene existed until we were
So sorry. I think we talked over each other, listener. Yeah, Legion. Hold on. He forgot too. He was in the hospital as a John Doe,
right,
being taken care of by, and he actually wakes up and accidentally reads Eric Lensher's Magneto's mind and sees like horrors and traumas of his past, and that freaks both of them out and it wakes him up. So then he remembers who he is. And then he goes and yes, he uses his powers to look like Charles Xavier and get uncomfortably.
Honestly, it's the most Oedipal thing I've ever seen in my whole fucking life. He turns into his dad to try and seduce his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Are we supposed to imply he kisses her? Because I'm looking at right now at a panel where he's got his hand like on her butt. And then he says, "Don't call me Charles, not tonight."
Yep, it's bad.
That's really not cool.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah. It's also really cool how they use the trauma of a female character to provide motivation to a male character. I really loved that part.
Oh, yeah. That's just, totally cool and a totally cool thing to do
and normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's
very original.
It's really great, and I love it how they still do it as well. Yeah. It's really cool.
I mean, it's the only way to convey things, I assume, right?
It's the only way a character can ever have motivation is through trauma of another character.
Okay, so lots of crazy stuff is happening in around this incest. And there's Cable is strapped to a giant machine so that they can pinpoint the location in the past, I assume, is what they're trying to go for here. It's very strange.
This machine is really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially since it's like they're all stacked in a tower.
Right.
Yeah. It's magic science, I call it. Where they're just magic science. It's magic science. They're all just, because this machine is magically gonna link all their powers and literally stack them on top, stack their powers. Right.
So they actually, the X-Men that were back, get their memories back and, are, somehow back in their costumes. Did they just stash their costumes in the warehouse for a while? Because I thought that was pretty funny that as soon as they remembered who they were like, all right, guys, back in the spandex. And, it does come full circle. The reminders. Did you know that Bobby Drake was taken over and they used the powers better than him? Because he actually gets to reach his full potential because Obi-Wan is no longer holding him back. So he just looks like Beast except made of ice now, the way they're drawing him at his full potential, which I thought was hilarious considering he looks exactly like he did when he was joking around with Beast earlier.
Out of all of the characters, Iceman is drawn the most inconsistently.
Oh, yeah.
Like he is drawn however the artist wants him to be.
Right. And for half a second, I thought he turned into an ice version of Legion, but it's that he froze Legion, but it's just in a panel that's very confusing. And that should kill literally anyone baking them that cold that quickly, right? Like it should destroy their cells. Not Legion, though. He
should be dead.
He pulls a flash and speeds up his molecules, I assume, to warm up and breaks out of it and is about to kill Magneto, but Xavier gets in the way. So he ends up killing Xavier, his dad, who he went back to make sure didn't die so that Magneto wouldn't become evil. And basically fractures the timeline. So the whole point of this prelude was just to set up the timeline fracture for the main story.
And also, he disappears out of existence because since he killed his dad, he was never conceived. And then,
right. Then they don't have to deal with him anymore.
Yeah. just establish this insanely powerful godlike mutant and just write him out of the story. It's fine.
Yep. I mean, what else are you going to do with him?
Yep. And then the entire universe crystallizes, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And shatters.
And then the prelude gives us this extra little issue. Or no, wait, it doesn't. Yeah, the prelude, the collected edition prelude gives you like this extra little issue. The Legion quest ends, I think, in a good way. Like, he kills Xavier, the universe crystallizes, everything comes into existence. It's like, oh shit, now it's time for the actual Age of Apocalypse. Let's get into the ramifications of this. But if you buy the Prelude, they give you an extra issue that literally is just 20 pages of the hour before the crystallization back in the present of all the people like coupling up together and like kissing and like sharing their last moments.
And just like saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Very, again,
it was really just an excuse for this page, which is Cable kissing Domino.
Mm-hmm.
That is the arm that I was thinking of. That's the arm that I'm thinking of. His arm is wider than her body.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, the human arm does not have muscles in all those places.
Right. Now, Pat.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a person I know who seems to exercise fairly regularly. Have you ever seen anyone's arm look like even close to this?
No, again, because yes, I am a little bit of a gym rat, and I'm very much, but you've got a bicep in the front of your arm. You've got triceps in the back of your arm. There isn't like a sidecep. Like down the middle on the outside.
Yeah, I was wondering.
You got sips on your sips.
Yeah. I was gonna say, maybe my arm is just faulty because, I don't have any crazy side muscles
that are not there. Just drawing just circles, concentric circles. Like
you just draw random lumps, and then it looks like your guy is super muscly. That's what I learned from comics.
Yeah.
So that's it for the Prelude. I think we've made it pretty clear what we think of the Prelude. Do you have any final thoughts on the Prelude before we move on?
It could have been half the length.
I will say.
Yeah, that is a fair criticism.
It could have been half the length, but that extra issue at the end, Pat, that you mentioned, where they're basically all just hanging out being like, well, guess we're going to die.
Yeah.
It was really weird to consider that issue and a bunch of the others, the story with Bobby going home to see his racist dad, and the thing with Scott's dad crashing and in the forest and being saved by Adam Warlock, and then all the stuff where they're saying goodbye and contemplating their own mortality and stuff like that. It was so weird to have all that in a prelude for a story that's set in an alternate timeline. And we'll get into this when we cover the first volume, but it's it almost felt to me like they were basically going, hey, here are all the characters that you love, and here's why you love them. Mm-hmm. Anyway, here's a story that has nothing to do with any of that. Yeah. And I was just why are you showing me all this good stuff just to then immediately take it away from me?
Well, that last one definitely felt like hey, all the X comics are going to be taken up for a bit with this other storyline. So you're not going to see this version of the characters for a year. So here's one last look at them before we kind of put them, in the back room for a year and bring out these alternate timelines and dimensions. So I guess I can see why, from a creator standpoint, it felt very indulgent of the staff at Marvel.
Oh yeah,
because they'd been working with these characters for so long, and at this point, and this is the height of their popularity, right? When this is all going on.
Yeah, 95 is when this happened.
Yeah.
That was, Pete, it's when the X-Men cartoon was airing.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved it, and then it was rated as the most violent cartoon on TV by TV Guide, and I was no longer allowed to watch it.
Oh, no.
No, that was a little earlier, because that would have been 92, 93, I want to say, because there was a specific friend that I hung out with in that age range that I remember watching the cartoon.
Yeah. I still have
my older brother's girlfriend's little brother who was my age. So we became friends and we stayed friends long after they broke up, which was really weird. But it's oh, hi, my brother's ex-girlfriend who also lives here. This is awkward.
I watched so much of that. I've still got that, I call it the robot guitar instrumental theme song stuck in my head. It's amazing. It's literally like a robot guitar riffing.
Yes. All right. So now we have volume 1 of the complete epic.
The actual Age of Apocalypse.
Yes. And this one has a very, very short summary. It's actually only one sentence. In a cracked mirror world ruled by the genocidal mutant despot Apocalypse, only one hope remains: Magneto and the astonishing X-Men. That is literally the entire summary, which doesn't do much to summarize what actually happens in this volume.
Yep. So it starts with
no, it doesn't.
No. So this volume 1, and this is where, again, listener, we're doing the volumes as collected by Marvel in the complete
in the order given to
series,
us.
4 volumes. Because a lot of reading orders will have you start with X-Men Alpha.
Mm.
That issue leads off volume 2 in this order. So I think they're doing it's a very chronological order. We've read these in, and we're reading these in. And the first one is X-Men Chronicles: The Dawn of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at it's Magneto, right? And we learned that he's become the leader of the X-Men.
Yeah, he took up Charles Xavier's mantle of like, hey, let's make the world a better place, and all because Charles was murdered in front of him. Like, he wanted to see his ideals realized, essentially. So it completely changed his personality, having that traumatic event happen. So we kind of open with like the team is training, so you get to meet like what the current version of the X-Men is. So like Quicksilver is there, Jean Grey, Colossus, Scarlet Witch, and Storm. They're all part of this version of the X-Men, but they have like slightly different outfits, and it's like, yeah, their powers are the same, but they have some kind of the same kind of team dynamic, more or less. But it kind of is nice to have like a starting point that's like, okay, this is normal enough that you can kind of latch on with this issue, where it's like, okay, I see the differences, but it's not so buck wild yet that I'm like, that you're completely lost. And
other than Magneto, other than Magneto leading the X-Men, the other sort of like alternate timeline change we get is we meet Wolverine, but he's not Wolverine. He goes by, he's Logan or Weapon X. He still calls himself Weapon X.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's there. We get some Sabretooth later, but he's not quite here yet, right?
No,
all right, not yet. So let's see. I'm just kind of, we found this really, well, Pat, give you credit because you found this really long summary on Comic Vine.
Yeah, I can, so.
But if you want to, go ahead and take it.
Yeah, so this issue that starts it is kind of a little point in time, because after this, I think it jumps to after Apocalypse has basically won and conquered like half the world. But this is when it all starts.
Yeah.
So we've established that the X-Men are still a thing. They're led by Magneto. And then we cut to the beginning of Apocalypse's invasion, and he's in like, I think New York it's supposed to be. And it's like his horsemen at the time saying, basically announcing that, the time of humans is over, or we're conquering, and they start attacking the city.
Well, they break into Cape Citadel military base, which is basically they're just there to get a hold of nukes.
And then the team, the bad guy team, it's War, the current iteration of Death, Kandra, Gideon, and Sabretooth. That's where you have Sabretooth, because he's leading.
I like how they have all these like horsemen, names that are all grandiose, and Sabretooth. He's the rest of the horsemen.
But he's the leader.
I know.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because he's not one of the 4, right? There's 4, supposedly.
And there's this thing that Marvel's done, and I was a sucker for it. I mean, I have a ton of original Wolverine comics in my collection. And of course, he was one of my favorites, like everybody else, every other basic kid growing up.
Yeah, same.
But like him and Sabretooth are held out as like these super powerful, man. Yeah, I know they can take a beating and they've got sharp fingies, but in a world where people can literally just kill you with a thought, they're given way too much like credence as like these high level to be feared warriors. When it's like there are so many Marvel characters that could drop them from across the room before they'd even get there. But they're treated because they're cool, because they're tough guy brawlers, and they're really cool. And
they're 90s angst in human form.
Oh, goodness gracious, yes.
They were so popular.
And don't get me wrong, I just said I've got like the first 30 original issues of the Wolverine solo comic in like perfect condition, like stocked away, and was all about it, and totally loved that badass angstiness.
I bought into it full bore. Like, he was my favorite character. Him and Spider-Man were like my 2 favorites forever, and it's still like I think I'm more a Spider-Man guy at this point, but I still have that soft spot for Wolverine. Anytime you see him up here, you're just like, hell yeah, Wolverine's here. But they actually play into a thing I kind of forgot was like one of his major tropes, and that was the Berserker Rage. I'm like, oh yeah, the 90s was all about that Berserker Rage thing that he had going, where if he got too angry, because that's how all their powers seem to work, then then he goes into like a uncontrollable rage where he's like basically unstoppable. Like, and it's kind of like his brain just shuts off and he just goes into kill anything that moves mode. Sorry, my kids are being very loud in the background. So
I'm honestly surprised that mine haven't tried to bang on the basement door to come down. I never heard that yet.
So this is a not our normal recording time, because it turns out when you're in 3 very different time zones, you record it for me the middle of the day.
It's a pan-global podcast.
Normally we record at night, so it's a little quieter in the house, but that'd be the middle of the night for you. So
I mean, to do the next couple episodes, if I got to do it, I'll do it, guys. Don't worry about it.
Nah,
I'm a pro. I'll do this. But so X-Men before. So Apocalypse's people are attacking the base. I think they have like nukes there or something.
Right. That's what they're after.
Yeah. They have nukes.
Before Magneto and the X-Men head out to try and fight them, Mystique shows up with Rogue, a young Wayworld, young lady. New recruit for the X-Men. And this is a really weird, awkward meeting with her and Magneto.
Yeah.
It's like their attempt at foreshadowing something,
Yes.
Now we can talk about that thing when it shows up.
Yeah. So basically she is initiated, she's an X-Men, and then they get the call that something bad's happening. And Rogue stays behind with Scarlet Witch to guard the base. And is Wundagore Mountain a real place? Because I want to find out, actually. Wundagore.
It sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it could exist.
No, I mean, the first thing that pops up is Marvel Database.
Marvel Database.
Oh,
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, but the X-Men do eventually overcome. I'm going to move it along a little bit just because we got a lot to get through still. But basically, they have the big battle. You get some cool battle scenes. The X-Men are winning, but then the initial launch is stopped. But then let's see, they actually are able to successfully fire them. Is that what ends up happening? No, I'm trying to remember now.
I thought they won. They technically won, and then Weapon X severs. Sabretooth gets betrayed by Apocalypse and his people. And then, because they wanted to launch him, he didn't actually want to launch him, and Weapon X severs his spine, so he's just like limp on the ground. And I don't know, Magneto fires some blast at Apocalypse's ship that messes it up pretty bad or something.
Yeah.
So I think they technically win that battle, but the cruel irony of it is while this was happening, Nemesis was attacking the base.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Scarlet Witch ends up dying from that attack.
Witch.
That's the big twist.
Rogue fights him off successfully.
Right. Okay, and that was the Chronicles #1, X-Men Chronicles #1, and then it goes into Tales of Apocalypse #1. Is that right, or does it go to Chronicles?
It goes to Tales in the volume 1. The way it's ordered, it goes to Tales. Okay. And this is it's called like Sinister Bloodlines or something. And this is 5 years after an Apocalypse has successfully conquered all of North America and half the world essentially. There's other places they talk about him annihilating. And it opens with like an alien spaceship. Yeah, that's how they have it set up, because they give like really all they touch on is North America, Europe, and they give real like one-off comments about like Japan and Russia being totally destroyed, and that's it. And then because that's all the world is, right? Because there's not an insanely huge, 3 more insanely huge continents with billions of people in them. But it opens with a spaceship in Manhattan, which is where Apocalypse has chosen to make his like capital, getting shot down, and we learned it's Christopher Summers. the father of Scott. And then this is where we start getting into, I have a little bit of a tally here. I had fun little games. We start getting into, I call side flippers, cause that's the thing about the Age of Apocalypse. Some people, Magneto's not the only one who flipped from good to bad or bad to good.
Oh, okay. So we got, cause we meet, the Summers brothers and so we got Havoc and Cyclops, and
they're bad
guys. They work for Apocalypse now.
What?
And they tried so hard to make Cyclops cool, and it just still doesn't work.
Man. It's so, his outfit. So that's the other thing I want to talk about is like all the versions, the Age of Apocalypse versions of their outfits. Just so many pouches and just like random armor. I want these
in every game as alternate costumes. Any game that has these characters in them, like fighting games or anything, like why are these outfits not available? Because oh my god,
some I legit like. We'll get to those, but like, yeah. But also, Cyclops has got this super long flowing hair and only one eye. So
yeah,
and his beam coming out of like his robo monocle, I thought was very good though. Like, because he's got the one eye instead of two, so instead of having the big like bar across his eyes, it's like a monocle, like a robot monocle, like a scouter from Dragon Ball, except laser beams come out of it.
And Havoc's got a really cool face tattoo.
What was that about? It's just a line down his face, right? It's like a gradient.
I remember thinking that looked so cool, and like little comics and stuff. I was biting that so hard, and like characters I was doodling in junior high, like
nice.
That had like, I made this character that was a total ripoff of like Wolverine, but he had like two of those over each eyes, two just vertical black bars, like over each eye.
That's how you know it's even more extreme. That'd be the Image Comics version.
Yeah.
That has to go to the more extreme. So the thing is, Scott's a bad guy, but we see like part of his, good personality is still there because he's overseeing like, he's kind of like one of the top soldiers for Apocalypse, but he goes through their facility and he sees like where, Sunfire is getting tortured, and he's just like, man, like, again, are we the baddies? Like, he's realizing like, maybe this isn't good. And we also find out like there's a dark version of Beast who's called Dark Beast.
Yep.
Who, in my mind, instead of sounding like all smart like Beast, sounds like Tommy Wiseau. That's how I read all his dialogue.
Yeah, so Beast is bad, and he's like, they really hit the World War II allegory over the head hard throughout the course of this. Like, just, they beat you to death with it.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like this evil scientist who's doing cruel experiments on humans and mutants alike. But so let's talk about real quick. I know we were trying to move it along, but we're introduced to Dark Beast. What do we think of the aesthetic of Dark Beast versus traditional?
Like, that's what I'm saying. This part, I didn't really notice it too much, but once he returns at like near the end of the book and he's like fully in beast form with like the dark colored fur and the teeth,
and like,
I don't know
again,
why,
long hair
and the long hair. They all have long hair now. I couldn't stop reading his dialogue in a Tommy Wiseau voice because I'm like, if they ever make a Dark Beast and somehow if they remake Age of Apocalypse, then don't get him to play the Beast, I'll be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Sinister, don't interfere with my experiments.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Oh, hi, Apocalypse.
Oh, hi, Havoc.
How was your sex life? Love Tommy Wiseau.
Oh my gosh.
I think we can kind of really skip through this, the guy in the spaceship was Chris Summers, also known as Corsair, the Summers brothers' dad, who was in outer space.
Oh my god.
And he breaks out, they have to chase him down.
Fucking story.
It becomes a zombie. It becomes a zombie book for a minute.
Yeah, what was that about?
It's so fucking weird. Like, their dad shows up.
If you think we're all over the map, dear lister, this is just how the comic is.
Their dad.
So, listener,
their dad shows up.
He was kidnapped by aliens.
And they're like, well, if you're our dad, where have you been all this time? And he's like, listen, when I pushed you out of that airplane to keep you safe, I was then taken to space where I was a resistance fighter against the lizard people, but I had to come back for you.
And Jonah,
and it's like, what?
Jonah, as a fellow father, I'm sure we've all said that to our kids.
I know. Every time I have to push my kids out of a plane, I'm like, don't worry, I'm just being abducted by aliens again.
And like the thing that really
I just went out for cigarettes to
is
space.
that like he's saying this so straight-faced and so, like, intensely, but he has, like, this big Tom Selleck mustache and, like, a red bandana around his forehead, huge, ripped, hairy arms. And I'm just like, God damn, this is just a cliche, like, on print. It's so wild.
But it turns out he came back infested with the Brood, which is a very, I feel like, obscure X-Men Marvel thing. It's like a hive mind alien race.
Right. I didn't realize they turned people into Brood, though.
It's literally lizard zombie aliens.
Right.
Nice.
I've seen very little with them in it, but I did know they existed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens. Meanwhile, like Sabretooth has obviously he's no longer in the good graces of all the baddies. He wants out, and he rescues Blink, who is like a Nightcrawler-esque character who can teleport around, but also teleport other stuff around instead of just herself, it seems like.
Yep.
Like she can like see an object and teleport it as well. Because at one point in the story, she teleports a guy's head off of him. Like when she's about to be killed by somebody. There's also this shapeshifter character who was really annoying, and he was the wacky sidekick. What was his name? Morph?
Oh, did you not like Morph in this?
I mean, it's fine. He just felt like very... isn't it wacky?
I kept notes on everything he turned into. Like,
oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well,
but
he starts as the White Rabbit.
Yeah, he starts as the White Rabbit.
Part.
Yeah, so, real quick, the Brood thing, it ends up Cyclops kills their dad to save Havoc, but Havoc resents him for it. And that's
right.
And that's how that ends. And it's kind of like, why did we need that? But, and then we go to see what the current iteration of the X-Men look like, right? And that's when, Sabretooth is comforting Blink. He'd rescued her from the pens or something. They have these like prison camps.
Yeah.
Again, World War II allegory, super heavy. Right. But the next issue is that Tales from Age of Apocalypse by the Light, or X-Men by the Light.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that, or is that after the Sabretooth Blink morph scene? I'm actually losing
kind of losing track of where everything happens.
Which, I mean, accurate representation of how it is to read this comic.
So, but yeah, Jonah was right. So they have that scene where we see there's like an underground hiding, like an underground base with tunnel system, and it's Sabretooth is basically trying to coax Blink into do something, like be useful.
Right.
And she's just kind of wallowing in depression and fear and self-pity.
Right.
And then,
I mean, it's not like she hasn't been through the ringer, right?
No, it's completely justified. And then I know the next issue is the Tales from Age of Apocalypse X-Men : there's lots of colons by the Light, and it opens with a fight with Magneto's fighting two villains, like Krill Creed or something, and then Diablo.
Okay,
and he's trying to save Senator Robert Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
And I just give her like, what is up with Diablo's head?
Does Senator Robert Kelly come back later?
No.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad this whole thing was important.
Good job, X-Men.
But
yeah, I really thought that was going to have a payoff because they made a really big deal out of it.
Nope. It's just like they're just trying to throw characters in, and Diablo's redesign is kind of weird. Not that his original was cool at all, but he's got this really weird headpiece. And then, maybe he had like plans or something like that, because they find out that Apocalypse is hurt and he's recovering on a giant spaceship called Ship. And I read that like twice back to myself. I was like, okay, that's what
that's what they're going with.
I love, there's a panel where, when they are looking at plans, I think it's Nightcrawler and it's called Ship. And then behind him, there's like 3 X-Men, and they all have these like stunned looks on their face.
Yeah.
Like he just did something really crazy.
Yeah. It's so weird. Yeah. It's, I think we've bounced around a little, and I'm wondering if the order presented in the collection I have is the same, because some of this is happening in a slightly different order, at least how I read it, but that's okay. It all kind of comes together in the same places, I'm sure.
Okay, do you want to keep going with this, or do you want, because it kind of ties into the whole Blink arc, or do you want to skip? Because there was also the other X-Men Chronicles book.
Right, yeah, no, we're good. The other one has a real short summary, so I'm just going to read the summary.
Okay.
So that we can move on. So, Chronicles 2, after Xavier, the Age of Apocalypse, the Age of Apocalypse, Weapon X and Jean Grey confront Magneto and leave the X-Men. So that happens. Just kind of, I think, to take them out of the battle, because Wolverine is so powerful. Actually, Jean Grey is the real,
well, don't call him Wolverine, because there's another character
Weapon X.
Wolverine. Like, what the?
Hey, we're about to get there. So elsewhere, Holocaust, one of the Horsemen, sends Wolverine, who is not the one you're thinking of. It's this big, like, Liefeld-esque ugly dude. He's a giant
Jonah,
assassin.
are you trying to imply that Rob Liefeld has designed some ugly characters in his time? Because that's really insulting.
A few. I'm sorry. So he's sent to kill the X-Men. And he was supposed to kill someone that Magneto loves in front of him.
Yeah.
That's like his assignment.
Yeah. Because what's the point of ruling the world unless you're not unnecessarily cruel about it, right?
Right, exactly. So he goes to the X-Men headquarters in New Mexico, which is where they're located now. He attacks the X-Men and is able to beat most of them. It never really says what his powers are. He just seems like a big dude with long fingernails.
Give power to regular humans, it looks like, or something at one point.
Right.
Like, he makes an army of humans.
I thought that was the gas that guy was talking about, though. Or am I confusing that with later?
He definitely has an army of regular human.
Oh, sure.
So
he powers up some humans. They have a big brawl. Rogue decides to save Magneto over Gambit and breaks Gambit's heart. All right, and then finally Gambit charges the giant mutant and blows him up. He charges like a rock or something, he said, and like stuffs it in his belt. So he basically like puts a bunch of explosive rocks down his pants and blows him up. And this is the beginning of the Rogue's Magneto fanfic that we've all been wanting, right? No, it's creepy.
No, no one wanted this.
At least twice as old as her.
Yeah.
He's got kids her age, literally.
Yeah.
Also, they only just met, like, I don't know, like a week or two ago.
Yeah, it's odd. I didn't like it. And, it's just kind of there to make Remy sad, right?
So technically, this is like 5 years after they meet, but
no, you're totally right. It is 5 years after.
Yeah, that's the time.
But what's creepy is Scarlet Witch, Wanda, when she dies, and on day one when Rogue shows up and the school's attacked. And by the way, we should still say Holocaust is the same person as Nemesis who attacked the school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're the same person.
Aware of that.
In her like last words, she tells Rogue, who she just met that day, to be a friend to her father.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, go, come here. Suck my dad's dick. It like the whole, that whole like relationship triangle thing is so bizarre because like, you know, I feel bad for Gambit here because obviously, you know, he's very cut up about this, but also he is really petulant about it as well. Like he goes to find Magneto and he literally tries to talk to him during like this deadly training exercise and be like, so I'm like really in love with Rogue. Can you talk to her for me so that like we can date and stuff? And I'm like,
hand her this note that says, "Do you like me? Check yes or no."
And that would be like
much.
I feel like that'd be an inappropriate thing to bug someone if all of us were just doing like our jobs and someone was trying to like, look, man, I'm trying to work here. He's literally doing like a life or death training exercise.
Yeah, he's like, don't hold back because I'm not going to.
And Gambit wants to hand him a note to pass to Rogue.
Yeah, it's so
weird.
It
was a choice.
But so then we learned, though,
it's so bizarre.
Again, the power of magnetism, right, guys? We learned that Magneto has been able to create a magnetic field around himself so that he and Rogue can touch.
Yes.
And fuck.
Who needs condoms when you can make a field of magnetism? Am I right, folks?
Well, he obviously will get out of there later.
Yeah. He's got plenty of iron in the system, his little metal sperm.
Real quick, just say that Rogue's hair is quite something in this version, where she has like the mullet to end all mullets. Like it's kind of a party in the front, it's a little bit of business up front, but it is such a party in the back. Like it is wild how much of a party it is. But yeah,
they're partying like it's 1995.
Do we see? I think Colossus is in this scene. The new Colossus.
Yes, with the headband.
I dig it. I dig the look.
Yeah,
actually, I'm a sucker for it. I really like
the pouches.
The visual of the Colossus. It's like you kind of almost don't get enough Colossus because I'm like, I want to know how his life and personality are screwed up from this, because you kind of know him as being like the squeaky clean, There's a big arc later that's all about heavily about him.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that then. So after all this craziness in the Chronicles books, and before we get into Blink even, there's the whole X-Man side story that, when people jokingly are like, my favorite X-Men is X-Man, it's like, so Nick Summers or like, or Nate Summers, cause that's like a whole thing. So we get Mr. Sinister basically genetically making, X-Man, Nate Summers, from the genes of,
Jean Grey
Scott Summers and Jean Grey. Yeah. So it's Baby Cable, or is this a totally different guy? That's the part I was confused about.
I guess, if we're talking, he's Nate Gray, and he's technically a different person.
Okay, so I didn't know if he was just like an alternate timeline of the same dude, or this be like kind of like a brother in a weird way, like genetically at least.
I think it's certain, but they have like the same name, because isn't Cable's real name Nathan also?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, is this just an alternate version of him, or what is going on here? So either way, we get to see him have crazy powers. He's basically keeps getting put in this like chamber to age him and like increase his powers. And he's like the most powerful teen the world has ever known. So we get a little side story of him fighting some baddies and, interacting with some of the other characters. But it's like, this is all in another dimension that's like parallel to what's going on in the other alternate dimension we're seeing. So this is where it gets to where people can't just buy comic books. This is why we can't have nice things.
This is kind of nice things.
It's because X-Man exists. And the whole point of that storyline, I think, was just to push him into the other reality, right? Like, so that he could show up later.
Yeah. Because I don't spoil
Blink,
it.
Yeah, but then Blink gets to show up in her own 4-part series. So,
but what leads up to that real quick is they go up to some giant ship called Ship. Its name is Ship.
Right.
Yeah, and they have a fight with the New Death, who is actually from the Inhumans. I think it's like Maximus the Mad or something like that.
Okay,
and they actually get their ass kicked really fast by the Inhumans and captured. But then Cyclops helps them escape, and with the help of Blink, and then all the X-Men escape the ship, and the ship like blows up. But of course, Apocalypse doesn't die, because
of course
this would be over then.
And
he's only been in like one page so far, right?
Death is sort of like trying to step on in to like
like he's going to usurp,
be the top dog.
Yes,
yeah.
That doesn't end well for him.
Also, sorry, clarify something for me. They talk about how Apocalypse is recovering from from some battle or something.
Yeah.
What battle?
It's not in these like collected editions, whatever it is.
Yeah. Something with the X-Men with Magneto as the leader did defeat him at some point.
Yeah. Why would
we don't
it
get
be?
to see that.
That's true. I don't know why I would expect that to be.
All the things they put in these, why don't they show us that?
No,
it was so weird.
Much.
Like I was genuinely like, oh, there must be something wrong with the version that Pat has bought, because it doesn't show that big battle between the X-Men, Magneto, and Apocalypse, where Apocalypse is defeated to the point of he has to like retreat to a hospital and recover. No, it's just not in here. Okay, all right, interesting choice that we didn't get that, but we did get Blink issues 1 to 4.
So let's get into Blink 1 through 4, because there's a lot going on here too. So this. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so she sneaks into. She basically is going from very unconfident and not doing anything. We have a couple really quick little vignettes of them like battling and her kind of going rogue. God help me. But basically doing her own thing and getting really full of herself and really confident in her abilities.
It was a real gambit she took.
She gets scolded by Magneto, basically says like, fuck you. And then she like infiltrates like the headquarters of Apocalypse in Manhattan and she sneaks up on Holocaust, who is randomly attacked by aliens from another dimension who just show up, like attack him for like 30 seconds and then disappear.
Right. And then leave.
And then she attacks and falls through that same portal. And that's what leads us into Blink 1 through 4.
Yeah.
And
sounds right.
Did I miss anything, Jonah? I mean, I know.
Dark Beast is in this because, and I have to point it out because this is where I realized he was Tommy Wiseau, and I will read the bubble that made me realize this. But don't feel jealous, Clarice. You are a work of art.
Oh yeah, she kills the alien she blinks him away that was being used as like the genetic blueprint for all the Infinites. Mm-hmm. Apocalypse has an army of genetically cloned or grown mutant soldiers called Infinites.
Right.
Yeah, just by the way,
Yeah.
In the army doesn't just come from nowhere, though. It is actually the negative zone, which is like a Fantastic Four thing. So they have a very, very tiny blurry cameo in the background of one panel where you're like, oh yeah, the Fantastic Four.
I love, by the way, all the residents of this place, they call their home the negative zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great. So yeah, the first part wraps up with her getting sucked into the negative zone and meeting up with what is that dude's name?
Amyor.
Yeah, I couldn't pronounce it. That's why I couldn't remember it. And he's like a resistance leader. So that leads us into the second part of Blink, which
super.
Go ahead.
30
Interject.
seconds.
We need more
Amyor's
footnotes.
Visual aesthetic, because it's such an example of what the weird idea of what like a recluse and nerd would have, of what a really cool like suave guy would look like, because he's got this like huge coif of hair, and he's got like, is he wearing a bandana around his eyes like Zorro?
He has a bandana, goggles that aren't on his eyes,
giant hoop
3
earrings,
slashes over one of his eyes, giant hoop earrings,
a
goatee, the giant shoulder pads with spikes on them, some kind of like, I can't tell if it's supposed to be a necklace or part of his costume. Kind of like Batman gloves, but instead of the spikes that come off, it's just these little like lines with loops on the end of them, which is a strange choice. This is all on top of like a unitard, of course it is, and then giant metal boots. So he's like if Mad Max was like a wrestler in the like 80s, but also had a gun. It's like, yeah, it is a choice that they made when they were designing this character. But Blink number 2 kind of gets into the meat of her story arc, and I have a quick summary here thanks to Comic Vine, where it says Blink's been thrown into the portal between Earth 295 and the negative zone, which, as you pointed out, they call the negative zone as well. They wouldn't call it like, our home planet or Terra 2 or whatever.
No, the negative zone.
And it was opened by Blastar's men, and Blastar is the leader of those guys who showed up randomly to try and take over the other dimension, because why not throw in like a whole other subset of villains?
It's an alien invasion on top of invasion.
Right. And of course, when she gets teleported over, she loses her memory, because they haven't already done that like 5 times in this story arc, right? So she meets Amyor. How did we pronounce this?
I said in my head Amyor.
Amyor, okay. Yeah. And they trade blows, of course, because they always have to fight before they can fall in love and be, and try and live happily ever after.
What, Johnny, you didn't knife fight your wife before you guys?
Surprising? No, we did fight, but only in Halo, because we met at a Halo LAN party.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So, same thing. And there's a lava quake, which forces them to flee, and they get on Amyor's trusty steed, Markle, who is this weird camel flying with bat wings looking ass creature who's apparently blind and uses sonar. It was a thing that existed. It was kind of fun. I liked it, but that doesn't mean it made any sense. And so of course she doesn't have her memory, so she's telling him about, all she remembers is that she was tortured and basically like there was, an evil dude and stuff. Like she doesn't remember much, but then she gets told of the tale of like, these 4 blue-clad interlopers showed up, which it shows as the Fantastic Four, as I mentioned, had taken over the land, stopped this like Annihilus, right? That was like the leader of the negative zone, but the new guy that came in, Blastar, is like even worse somehow, and he's basically sending troops to like kill innocent people and take over villages. And
the worst thing he did is he makes all of his men wear those matching one-piece swimsuits.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The Blastar and his men are all like, they designed one character and they're like, they're all just going to look like this. So she starts to get her, for some reason, just slowly like gets her memory back over time, and there's a big battle with these guys where they're trying to like save a village, and then of course Blastar wants to like use the Annihilus cannon. That's like the one big thing he had to like destroy other realities. It's like a whole thing. Like they expect you to know a lot of Fantastic Four lore, I think, going into this Blink side story.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Doesn't it cut ahead like a week or a few weeks, and they're basically Blink and Amyor are leading the resistance against Blastar, and they're in love.
Yeah,
and they're doing really well as
they
whole
have a
resistance thing as
relationship
well.
Going.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where that one leaves, and getting into number 3. Do you have that handy, Kieran? The summary?
I do.
Okay, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So she's in the negative zone, as we said, during this whole rebellion thing. And so she leads a bunch of Blastar's minions into an ambush, and the rebellion pops up, and they're like, "We have you outnumbered so much!" And they head on to one of Blastar's castles, because obviously he has castles in the negative zone. And so they storm their way into the castle. Blink, for someone who teleports, she doesn't really teleport that much, which is interesting.
Really? I know. I noticed that same thing.
Yeah. But she finds a bunch of young children chained up in this prison, and that brings back all of her memories of when she was on Earth, of someone called Ilana Rasputin, who she was imprisoned with. This giant face called Sugar Man, which was really weird, and the labor camps that she was in, and it's all too much, and so she falls unconscious. But Amyor, of course, rescues her. And several days later,
she got a touch of the vapors and fainted.
Oh yeah. But several days later, they're going along this river of glass, and Amyor's like, "Hey, I'm pretty keen on you." But before she can really do anything, Blastar's troops attack and they get captured. And so they're in kind of like a Star Wars, Attack of the Clones situation where they're all like chained up in like an arena kind of thing. Though I guess this was the original Attack of the Clones, because this was before Attack of the Clones.
Sure.
And Blastar's like, ha, didn't you know that your boyfriend Amyor is Annihilus? And then the issue ends.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wow.
But he's so handsome.
He's so handsome.
Or was. Now he's going to be a weird green guy.
Which, by the way, the whole them in like the gladiator arena doesn't go anywhere.
No, it doesn't.
No, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. They're just there so that Blastar can be like, now that I have you chained up and all these like thousands of people gathered to look at you, your boyfriend's an alien. Anyway, see you guys later.
That's literally what it is.
Yep. So the fourth part being, the resolution to Blink's storyline just being like battle. her trying to figure out how to stop this Annihilus cannon from destroying the other realities, which of course they do. And I know I'm blasting through this, but that's because there's not much to it other than the very last part where, although before I get to that, there's a picture of her thinking about like my friends and the picture of Magneto. What the hell is going on there? He has a giant void mouth going on and just he looks like a Muppet.
Yeah.
Like he looks so weird.
Yeah. I will take this opportunity to say that like some of the issues in this first collected volume genuinely ugly. Like not in that like, oh, some of the design choices are really crazy. Like actually look like dog shit. They look really bad.
Yeah, there's a random page of her in the jail cell, and it's really awkward. Like,
and then occasionally there's like some really good art in certain issues. Great. Like you get to some like Jim Lee issues, and you're just like, wow, there's a reason he was a rock star in the 90s, huh? Because it just is like night and day with some of the other stuff in here. Yeah. He's definitely got that distinct style. But anyway, plot wise, this is just them like stopping the destruction of the other dimension and Annihilus and Blank having to say their goodbyes because she's able to warp back to her home dimension where she's reunited with Sabretooth, who's basically like her father figure in that dimension. I was really worried because of the Rogue thing that was about to go in a different direction. And then it didn't. And I was
very
like, wiping
relieved.
all the sweat from my brow. I was like, oh, thank God.
Three things that are kind of dumb about this arc.
Sure.
Like the production of it, like the creation, especially pretty much all from two from a visual, one from a story. One is the cover of the third issue shows Blink making out with Annihilus.
Yes.
Yes, it gives it away that he's Annihilus, because that's not revealed until like the end of that one.
And then number two is, why would Blastar give her bolts back? It's such a dumb Bond movie villain thing to do. Like,
right.
And then the other, there's artist. What were you thinking, bro? There's literally a panel, I'm looking at it right now, where she's telling me, like, I only have 3 bolts left to save the day with.
Like Wolverine?
And there's 4 more sticking out over her shoulder.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
I thought I didn't. Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking of how she's holding them out like she's Wolverine, like they're his claws. Yeah. Like, all kids did with like chopsticks or forks or
pens.
At the time, all I was really thinking of is she's like, I have these 3 bolts and one's for you, one's for me, and one's for the cannon. And I was just like, I have no fucking idea what is happening. What are these bolts for? I don't get it.
I was like,
where do they come from, by the way? Where do Blink's bolts come from?
Is this a thing that she's had before? Because I sure as hell didn't remember it.
No idea.
Okay. Well, that's the end of volume 1. It was, let's get into final thoughts. Like I said, I had not read this before. I thought I had read some of it. Turns out, no, I had not. I knew it all from reputation. The idea behind it is so cool, and I'm hoping we get to that point in the later volumes, because I'm actually just like reading like each section as we go for the episodes we're recording, right? So I'm actually only as far as this, so I can't speak ahead yet.
Okay. I can,
but
I'll let Kieran go first.
Yeah, I know you can. So, just from what we've read so far, though, that's all I wanted to cover right now. Prelude, super confusing, does have some cool moments. That's my thoughts on that. The first part of Age of Apocalypse is a total mess, and I kind of love it in some ways, though, because of that. Like, I didn't hate it. Like, there was definitely some problematic spots from it being a 90s era book that we talked about. But it was a kind of a fun ride because it's just so weird. Like, it really encompasses like that 90s era of just the extremes, like the outfits being so extreme and the fact that they expect you to buy 10 different books this month just to follow this one storyline. And I'm just like, man, this encapsulates everything I remember about comics from that era, both good and bad. So, I actually found I enjoyed it way more than I was expecting to, because like just flipping through, I'm like, oh man, there's these talk bubbles go on for days, don't they? Because everyone monologues, but that's just the 90s. I mean, that's just how it was. So, yeah, I think I did actually end up coming out on the other side liking it more than I expected after reading like the first quarter of the prologue, where it was just like, here's 2 pages of this guy now, here's 2 pages of this other guy. I was really worried the whole book was going to be that. But once it kind of calms down and kind of finds a little bit of a groove, I was way more into it. So, Pat, what about you? Just for this part, we'll get to the other parts. I mean, I can do a little. I
won't spoil anything, but okay. There was a lot. Actually, there were a number of these issues I never read originally when I read them. Because same with you. So why would I read these? These had nothing to do with it. But yes, it has also. I think part of why I picked it was this series is so aggressively 90s. It's holding you down, opening your mouth and pouring raw, like uncut 90s into your gullet. Like, it's just, but what's funny is, and this isn't spoil, I will tell you the later issues, if you overall, there's a lot that you can make fun of, but if you overall enjoyed it, I think you'll like the next few volumes more, because they definitely hone in more on the Age of Apocalypse and what's going on in that conflict. I feel like almost what they did is they cast a really, really wide net in the beginning. Like, we're going to have every property involved in this. Every property. You're going to see what everyone's doing. And then I think maybe they got to a point and then they were like, oh shit, this actually has to end. we gotta coalesce this together and make sure it all actually ends at some point. So I think as it goes on, it does get tighter and tighter.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's crazy when a character like Blink gets their own miniseries that's a tie-in, when you're like, who the hell is Blink?
Yeah.
Kieran, final thoughts on these first 2?
So interestingly enough, I started reading the prologue and I, like you, Jonah, was like, what the fuck? Why is any of this happening? Why am I only getting like just a little snippets of all these different characters, and being informed of like everything they've been doing? But actually by the end of the prologue, I actually really liked the prologue. There were parts in it that were not very good, and there are obviously parts that have nothing to do with the story, but like overall the prologue is actually really well written and does a good job of like presenting all of the characters, and kind of like why their relationships are important and what's like good about them and that sort of thing. And as I said, the whole thing with Professor X and Magneto, good stuff, really liked it.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite part,
which just made it all the more bizarre when we had this massive tone shift into the Age of Apocalypse, which at this point, having not read 2, 3, or 4, not a huge fan of, gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
we're gonna win you back.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. But like at this point, like, I'm not even at the point where I can say, well, you know, I didn't hate it, and it's kind of fun, because like there are parts of it that I just don't even find that fun. And I almost feel bad for saying that, because like there is a part of me that can recognize like just the buck wild insanity of it. But I think for me at this point, it is just that tone shift of like, here are all these characters that are really great, and here's why they're all cool and you love them. And now here's something that has nothing to do with any of that and totally just goes against it. And it's just like, why would you do that? And also like,
but you get Wolverine, who's a giant guy with claws for some reason.
Yeah, it's like, hey, remember how Wolverine was kind of like angry, but like he still did the right thing? What if he was just an asshole? And like, you know, what if Scott Summers was still a boring, uptight prick, but he was also an asshole? And like, you know, what if, you know, what if Rogue was there, but she was also kind of moody and an asshole? And it's just like, why? why are we doing this? So
that's a great observation, because literally you could retitle this as like X-Men. What if every character was an asshole?
Right. It's like what if everyone was wearing a bandana and the sky was gray and everyone was really like, everyone was just a huge dick all the time? And yeah, so at this point, I'm like, you know, I can respect what it's doing, and I understand where it sits in the overall like comic like history sort of thing. But for now, I'm like, if it's not your thing, give it a miss. But we'll see how we go on the next few volumes. Hopefully it comes back around.
That's fair. All right. I think it will. All right. Well, we're going to end this episode here and come back next week, everybody, because we're going to get into the real meat of it picking up in the next couple volumes here. So, Pat, thank you so much for coming on the show. Why don't you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm probably most active.
Like online.
Yeah. It's
like, don't give me your home address or anything.
I'm probably most active on Twitter of all the social medias, at the Pat Edwards. I've also got a website, thepatedwards.com. Plugs real quick. The podcasts I'm involved in are Let's Rewatch. Like I said, kind of doing what we're doing here, but with movies. We take movies you liked back in the day, rewatch them, see if they held up, and for whom the dice roll. If, you have room in your life for just yet another role-playing game podcast, you can check that out. And
I mean, I do see those posts where they're like, I'm all caught up on the like 3 biggest ones that everyone's heard of. Who's got more suggestions? So if that's you,
Yeah. And then
I got 2 being plugged on this very show.
My book, Space Tripping, is available in ebook, paperback, and audio on Audible. And that's online.
I
Amazon.
need to get the audiobook version. Did you read the audiobook, or is there some?
I did not. Amazon bought the audio, so you can only get it through Audible. It's only because Amazon bought the audio rights and they used an actual voice actor to do it.
Okay.
And it turned out really well. I was very happy with that.
Cool.
So you can get it.
Yeah, I need to grab it. I have the physical edition and the ebook. I need the audiobook to complete the trifecta.
Yeah. And follow me because I have a lot of other stuff. I had a short story get published in an anthology at the beginning of 2019 this year. The anthology is called Escape with a capital exclamation point. And then I've got 3 more short stories pending publication later in the year. And Space Tripping, the sequel. That's not the final title, but should be arriving hopefully in 2020.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Kieran, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet. I am at Mr. K_Bennett. You can also check out my Dungeons and Dragons podcast. That is for Crits and Giggles, which is at for CNG podcast on Twitter. Jonah, where can people find you online?
Oh man, I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm at Spambot. And I actually just launched a Patreon of my very own, not just for the show. I got my own personal one. And I was in on the ground floor. I just had never launched it. So it's actually patreon.com/Jonah. So it's really easy to remember.
Wow.
And it's for my short story writing, which is a thing I really like to do, but I haven't really done much of lately. So to motivate myself, basically, I started that, and just for showing up, just go to the page. There's a short story I published in like 2013 to Amazon called Beatrice Abandoned Ship, and you can just get it for free on there just for like going to my page. You don't have to pledge, but if you would, that'd be awesome. Yeah. I have a few in the works. I know Kieran's read at least one of those like months and months ago and gave me some notes that I still need to implement, and that'll probably be the first one that I put up there.
Yeah, I'll read them.
Cool. So that's it from us, and we'll be back next week with even more X-Men. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye. Love you.